Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Cafe. I'm your host, 𝗍𝗃𝗃𝗃, and today I have my dear friend Lorna all the way from New York. And I want to introduce this amazing woman to you. So Lorna has been a global businesswoman running large multinational organizations. She served as president of multinational consumer good companies for 20 plus years in Danone, Kraft, and Mondelez. She was also a member of the global board of 𝗟𝘅𝗃𝗃 for 6 years and now serves as a board member for a number of high impact organizations. She has lived and worked in 7 countries, including China. She's a TED speaker. Her talk on radical independence has been viewed over 2 million times. And today, she is now a speaker and coach and is passionate about bringing indigenous wisdom into business, rhino conservation, and helping leaders live and lead with love. Welcome to the show, Lorna.
Hi, 𝗍𝗃𝗃𝗃. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
And so I want to share a little bit how we met. So we met on a course called 𝗟𝘅𝗽𝗃𝗃 by Michael Neill. And I've gotten to know you a little bit better in our conversations on different courses and masterminds. And I have to say, whenever you're on the call, there's always a deeper presence of just space. And I notice I'm always more myself and willing to be more vulnerable when you're on the call. And I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate you for that presence.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so today, the reason I wanted to bring you on this podcast, because I wanted to talk to you about overcoming quote unquote big obstacles, because I think that so many, especially now, there's so many things that just look so big and difficult to us. And oftentimes I feel those things stop us from moving forward or taking the next step or action. And given your experience and the things you've created in your life, I wonder what you think about that. And I think the first place to start would be to ask you, what does an obstacle look like to you?
Well, what does an obstacle look like, and what does big look like? I mean, I think This is interesting, right? Because it's so funny when you read my bio, because in many ways, I'm reminded of Joan Didion, who the extraordinary American writer who died a few months ago. And one of her quotes was circulating on the internet, which is, "I've lost touch with a number of people I used to be." And it really resonated with me, because when I hear you describe me, I think, wow, who was that person? Because the life that I lived when I was running corporates was very different from the life I live right now. And when I think about, for example, I was running, billions of dollars of business with tens of thousands of employees. And I never really saw that as big. And I had many things that other people would consider to be obstacles, but they were what I did with my life. And they were problems that I liked to solve. And so I just was kind of in them. But what was interesting to me in retrospect is I was sort of overcoming those obstacles in inverted commas because I thought that there was something on the other side of them. And that's not how it looks to me. I mean, how it looks to me today is completely different. It looks to me like if something looks hard or like an obstacle, it's an invitation for me to see where my thinking's off. It's a completely different invitation than a conquering invitation, which is how it used to look. And, I'm gonna solve this sucker. Yeah. I'm gonna beat it. And I sort of kind of liked obstacles because they were something to overcome. Now I like them for a different reason. They're an opportunity to go deeper.
Wow. So my mind just exploded because I just realized that, I do that right now. I look at obstacles as things to conquer, to achieve, to overcome, to kind of put a little medal on my ego, my ego, like, oh, look, 𝗍𝗃𝗃𝗃, like you overcame that obstacle. So like, you're so strong and you're so smart and you're so talented. And I just realized that that's the never ending game, that it's never enough. And as soon as those obstacles are like, okay, I need a bigger obstacle, I need a bigger challenge. And I love what you're pointing to is, instead of looking at something to achieve, it's just an indicator of where your thinking's at. because
Yeah,
yeah, right. Like I don't look at a glass like I'm gonna go get a glass of water. Oh my God, I have to conquer.
I
Just
know.
get a glass of water.
Exactly, exactly. And what I think is interesting is I'm so struck, and it really, it really touches me at how extraordinarily well made we are. So
Mm,
I've just wrapped up a project that I I thought was really hard a lot of the time. So I had lots of sort of obstacle thinking, and I had all sorts of stories in my head that would come up about why these people were difficult, why this project was difficult. And all of that was an indicator. First of all, I felt that indicator in my well-being all the time. Like the sort of indicator system in our systems are remarkable. So I felt tense in my tummy. I felt a tightening of the jaw. I felt slightly sick a lot of the time when I thought about that project. All of that says to me, I got some really, really peculiar thinking going on here. It says nothing else, just that.
mm,
And so that indicator light tells me I've got weird thinking. Now, the interesting question is like, what do I do then? And sometimes I make it worse by trying to work out why I'm seeing this thing as difficult or why but that's now a major rabbit hole. I'm going to go even worse in trouble. In this particular project, which I really struggled with, for most of the project, I really couldn't see what my thinking was. I just knew it wasn't good, but I didn't have any alternative but to just keep on doing what needed to be done. I mean, there were things to be done. And I think that that's one of the big illusions for me. I mean, there's so often I've hoped that I could be super graceful, man, that I could be chilled and calm and I could follow my knowing. Well, sometimes apparently that's not available for me. Sometimes it's just like icky.
mm,
And as long as I can see just out of the corner of my eye that it's not really icky, that I'm just making up that it's icky, and I almost always can see that just a little bit now, even when I think it's horrible, I can kind of see that it's, I know that Michael Neill makes this analogy of a hangover, and I presume a few people on this call have had hangovers in their time. Even when you're really, really feeling terrible because you ate and drank too much the night before, there's a little part of you that knows that it'll pass.
yeah.
And that's exactly the same here. But, this project that I've been working on took nearly 18 months. And there have been glimmers of joy and insight, but a lot of it was just one step in front of the other. But knowing that I'm the one creating this, and I'm hoping that one of these days I see what that was about, but I may die not ever knowing. So I think it's important also that we don't, glamorize it when you're in it.
Well, there's thank you. Well, firstly, I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing. I saw a lot in what you just shared in that, right, in our society, there is a premise of glamorizing how hard it was. Look how much bullshit this person put up with, and look at how much Lorna achieved. She must have overcome so many difficult obstacles, and that's why she's an amazing human being. And there's that, right? There's that premise. So a premise meaning we make it up, right? In that, like, the harder the road, the more accomplished you must be and the more value you must have. And also, for everybody listening who came here hoping for a formula and overcoming big obstacles, I'm sorry, we only have insights here. Sorry to burst that bubble. But what also I saw in what you shared is how, like, me too, I look at big obstacles and gosh, like, if only there were an easier way to go through it and actually have fun. If there only, and then sometimes I know most of that is dependent on how present I am, but also, like, I think it's also, but some part is just gonna suck. Like, there's some like really shitty parts of doing what you gotta do and then going through that with as much grace as you can allow, right? And I think it's really humbling to accept that. And also what I love what you said about just sometimes it really is one foot in front of the other, right? Opposed to standing and trying to change the obstacle in your mind or your thinking. Like, well, sometimes you just got to get in it. and see what occurs.
Yeah, it's true. And I tell you, Nikon, as you're speaking, it just really occurs to me to share this thing that I've been seeing a lot lately, which is I am really careful who I speak to now about what I'm up to. Because to your point about how sort of the common narrative in the world, there is no shortage of people who will line up and tell you how hard everything is. No shortage.
Yeah.
And they will feed the narrative and they will feed my worst stories.
Yeah.
And I have less and less appetite for that. So, for example, if I'm up to something big, I mean, you and I were talking before this podcast about what big is. And when you and I speak about it, we know that we're not going to pull each other down a rabbit hole. We're going to share notes about how it really looks to us. And I noticed that I don't speak about projects until they're kind of formed enough for them to be stable in the face of a narrative that doesn't help me. And I have no interest in explaining myself in a way that makes sense to other people. Because I've tried and I noticed that I would sort of sell my own knowing or my own insight in service of some neat wrapped up little package that satisfies somebody else's messed up thinking. And I'm just noticing, oh, it's so wonderful. So I've become really good at dodging questions. I'm explaining things in new ways. For example, I've really become interested in explaining things in the third person, because what I've noticed is that if I say I am up to something, it's a very slippery slope around me identifying with that thing. And then I'm like, well, I'm either succeeding or I'm failing. I'm really clear, Nikon, that it's not me.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, there's me there somewhere, but if I now start to speak about a project that got done or a project that is being done, so there's this project that is happening and its goal is to whatever. There's a softening in me. And the project itself has space. And it feels to me that the universe has more space because I'm not grabbing it so hard and going, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. And let me tell you the narrative. So I think this is something, it's interesting. I just said, I. So it's an invitation for anybody who's up to big things to be careful how they speak about it, who they speak to, and in service of what.
Right. And I what I just saw, I think, and probably an old habit, I think I still do, is the moment I'm facing an obstacle, there's something in me that just wants to talk about it to as many people as possible because I want their empathy or I want kind of their understanding, or sometimes I just want to talk shit with people. But in what you just shared is I saw how it probably doesn't help that much because I'm just creating more the opposite of space. I'm creating more clutteredness in my mind about it. And there's something you pointed to, it's very powerful, is 𝗟𝘁𝗍𝗀 saw that it's the universe needs space within us to work. It needs that room to move and breathe. But if it's so cluttered with our thinking about the obstacle or about what we're up to or our goals, it's so tight, and we wonder why we feel tight about it. And there's something else too, in that you said, I think that's a great sign as an indicator. Like if something looks like a big obstacle to you, there's probably something in your thinking or in you that's taking it very personal, right? It's big to me. Now I have to conquer this stupid mountain so I can feel better. My value has been attached to this obstacle, but I don't know it, right? It's like, if I don't achieve this obstacle, then I look like an idiot. I'm not performing. And I think when you point to is so true. It's hard enough to get your own shit together. It's even more hard to convince other people to get their shit together so you can have your space, right? It's like, I need to convince myself, and now I got to convince you because I already told you it's a big obstacle. It's easier now. I can see why. I think when as we kind of get deeper in this understanding that three principles, there's less to say, almost.
You know, that's so wonderful. It's so true. It's so true. You're absolutely right. There's less to say, which is hilarious since we're on a podcast where all we've got to say, we could just stare at each other and be in love with each other. But I think there's another really interesting little thing that I'm noticing, which is the question of appreciation or gratitude or applause. So I had the strangest thing happen to me a couple months back. Somebody was trying to encourage, get me to do something that was in his interest. He was trying to persuade me of something. He's trying to sell me. And as he was kind of schmoozing me, I think, is that a word that everybody knows? He was kind of going,
charming
exactly, you're really clever and everything. As he was saying all the things that he thought were compliments to me, honestly, Nico, and for the first time in my life, I had this kind of neutral acceptance of the fact that the things that he was saying were true. All of those things that he said that I did and that I was capable of were true. And I had zero pride in them. They were like, I have a hand.
Cool. Thanks for appreciating my hand. Yeah.
I don't take credit for my hand. It's an extraordinary hand. It has amazing abilities, but it's not like me ego hand. It's a fact. And I have never actually seen my skills, my capabilities with the same neutrality as I saw it that day.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that has such a great feeling to it. Like my whole body just eased. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And since then, I've started to notice that I am much less interested in people's thanks or applause or congratulations. And in fact, it's becoming an indicator of messed up thinking. When I'm craving your approval. Like, I mean, if you take even this podcast, so here you and I we're having a chat. When I'm clearly in a chat, just you and me hanging out, seeing what we can see, I'm here. If there's anything in my head that says, well, I hope that people on this podcast think I'm doing a good job, or I hope that Nikon's happy with me, I'm not here, man. I'm off there. So there's something about that I'm seeing in other parts of my life, that when I'm finding things difficult, like I'm beginning to get suspicious that this project that I just finished, that there was a lot of need for approval in that project. I think that's my theory that just emerged to me today. So I think there's something also interesting around this whole question of identifying, and that question of like, I'm going to tell you how hard it is. You're going to tell me that I'm a hero for conquering it. As you say, there's no end there, mate. And there's no prize at the end of that right now.
I love that. Thing. That's quotable. What would the Twitter quote be, or Instagram quote? It would be, there's no prize at the end of needing for validation. Right. And I just saw that too, because I realized that in my work, there's a part of me that kind of wants that. Right. And I see it now, it's not coming from the nicest place. So it's all about me, and it takes my attention away from the work. And there's something so powerful in what you shared about neutrality. I think that's a good way to tell where you're at on this spectrum, right? Is if the more neutral an obstacle looks to you, the more on track you are, almost. Like if you're not taking it personal, if your value is invested, like, okay, cool. Like I have to create so and so much money by the end of the year. I have to make this impact. Cool. Let's get to work. And your mind, there's more space and your mind's more clear. I think that's a great indicator, right? Because normally in our conversations, like, how do you know you're off? Well, this is how you know you're off. If this obstacle looks real personal to you, and it's, your personal vendetta or your values tied to it, you're not on the right track. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And exactly, if it looks like, and again, if you come back to that question of, I mean, I just thinking about my hand, it is remarkable. I mean, it is, I can weep when I think about what this hand can do. All its judgments, all its ability to pick up things, soothe people, hit things. It's a remarkable hand. And so I can appreciate and value its skill, its abilities, just as I can appreciate and value the skills that belong to this human who currently is called Lorna, and not be identified personally with it. Because I'm not actually identified personally with my hand. I'm not. I mean, I kind of am and I kind of am not. I mean, it's my hand, it's on my body, it's not yours.
Yeah.
But it's different than the other thing we're talking about. And I agree. I think it's a really great sign. There's something so precious about that, knowing, seeing.
Right. There's another thing to us, speaking to Robin Charbit, the co-author of Invisible Power, and one of your mentors yesterday, actually, on a podcast. And he shared how, you know, because in overcoming big obstacles, usually there's an insight where you're like, oh, and then that's the solution, right? And he said that most people go, wow, look how good I am. Like, you know, look how amazing I am for this insight to solve this problem. He said very rarely do people go, wow, holy amazeballs, I had an insight that came from thin effing air. How cool is that? I think that's what's on offer here. Is this is going to sound really weird, like, wow, I think this is an obstacle. Like, holy shit, like this looks like a thing to me. This looks so my value is tied to it. That's some really interesting psychological acrobatics there, you know? And to see that, it just frees up all this space. Like, look at me do all those like somersaults and shit, you know?
That is beautiful. That's such a great thing to see. And that's true, right? And and it allows you to even see, like, I'm moving house at the moment.
Yeah.
And I really, really, really have a lot of thinking about it. And and last night I was packing some things up and I was like, grumble, grumble, grumble. And then I suddenly saw, amazing, that out of nowhere came all of this grumbling. Whereas 2 minutes before, I was folding up a t-shirt and putting it in a box, like just folding up a t-shirt, putting it in the box. And then out of nowhere came this is horrible. And it's so interesting you say that, Nikon, because I normally am, I know, I don't know what normally is anymore. I have many times been grateful for the cloud lifting, for me to feel nice. But last night, in a weird way, I was grateful for the icky thought that came because I actually saw it.
Right.
I saw it come. It's like, wow, I was just a minute ago folding a t-shirt, putting it in a box. And now I'm making a whole story about this t-shirt in this box. And that's remarkable that it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. I reckon we just solved one of my personal mysteries for a long time, because one of our mutual mentors of Dr. 𝗵𝘀𝗀, and he would share, whenever he would have negative emotion or experience an obstacle, he would get excited. I'd be like, okay, Dr. 𝗵𝘀𝗀, I don't know what you've been drinking, but that does not look like that way to me. But now I'm like, oh yeah, now I get it. I understand why you would be excited about experiencing an obstacle, because you can just see your thinking. And I'm like, oh wow, like I have stuff on this. The system is working in a way. We're experiencing our thinking, not experiencing circumstances. And how fascinating it is. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
because,
go for it.
Oh my God, this is such a great conversation. I'm seeing so many things because it's really closely tied to that thing that I'm seeing all the time, which is the sort of impulse or the habit of judging. I like this. I don't like this. I want this. I don't want that. Oh my God, Nikon, the amount of energy that I have over my lifetime put into sorting, good, bad, right, wrong, completely made up. When I really see the neutrality, t-shirt in box, calm, no thinking, t-shirt in box, lots of thinking. Next t-shirt in box, who knows what's coming next. The sort of judgment of good or bad, right, wrong, it's just thinner, it's lighter, it's just not there. And so coming back to your very first question, obstacle.
Right.
Obstacle. Oh, some people think obstacle good. Some people think obstacle bad. I mean, it's a thought. The system working as it does to make up a story about a thing.
I'd love for you to say more about judgment. So what I see you're pointing to is, and I just saw that too, it's quite incredible about how there's a very specific relationship between judgment and obstacle, right? And almost like obstacles come from judgment. And I'd love for you to expand on judgment to make that more clear for people listening.
Well, you know, one of the things that apparently this human called Lorna is doing a lot of work with Indigenous people. This is one of those great examples of like, how did that happen? I can't even explain it. It just was a series of events that led me to a number of interactions in that space. And a few months back, something really landed in me, which is that almost all of the people that I'm hanging with in that space, and these are people who are, you know, Australian, New Zealand, American, Indian, all sorts of people who are kind of closer to their original cultures than sort of white Western culture that I hang in. And one of them explained it beautifully, that to be a human is to be tragic and heartbreaking and sad and hard and tired. And it's magnificent and extraordinary and earth-shatteringly, extraordinarily beautiful and moving. It is both of those things. That's what it is to be a human on the planet right now. Always has been, always will be. And every single one of those people see that and accept it and come from that truth. And I suddenly saw, oh my gosh, I have spent so much of my life pushing away things that I've decided were bad and grasping for things that I thought were good. First of all, I made up good and bad. You and I could have a big conversation about what's good or bad. Right. And second of all, the entire energy of that is exhausting.
Oh my God.
Because it comes from a presence, from a premise that makes no sense. When I think about it, it really moves me, because now when I really see that premise of sorting doesn't make sense. We are humans on this planet with this amazing ability to experience all of it. And in that all of itness, stuff gets done. There are projects. And that same characteristic of the human experience plays out. And once we really, really see that, and I mean, I see it and I forget it, and see it and forget it, like all of us, then you're exactly right. The very idea of an obstacle becomes hilarious, because what?
Yeah, what? Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and if you want to, the fact that you see it as an obstacle becomes something interesting or curious or a sign that the system's working. So that has been a complete game changer for me, and an enormous. It's interesting, as I'm speaking about it, I know that the system's working because I feel moved. It feels true to me that the need, that there is no need to judge any of it.
Yeah. I love all of that. I think we did that 𝗟𝗃𝗃𝗃 thing where we just arrived at the quietness.
And isn't it amazing? Because that's
Yeah.
another way that the system works, right?
Yeah.
There's this moment where we both went,
yeah.
and then we kind of catch ourselves and we think, oh, we're on a podcast, that
Podcast. Yeah.
silence doesn't
Dead
do well and all that.
silence. Yeah.
But there's a feeling now.
Yeah.
And from this feeling,
Hmm.
who knows what arises next? Who knows what feeling comes? Who knows what impetus comes?
Right.
This is the space.
Hmm. I'm going to hang out here for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then interestingly, the sort of, the embarrassment, I've noticed a lot. I've just been noticing this thing that I call embarrassment, which is another angle on what do you think about me? Which is really fun. It's like, oh, bless. You and me sitting here, looking in each other's eyes, thinking, the thought occurs, I wonder if the other people will think I'm an idiot. Oh, bless.
Yeah, bless them. Yeah. Yeah.
And bless me.
Exactly. Gosh, so much came to mind and then nothing came to mind just now. And there's something, I'm so happy we recorded this because this conversation is amazing. And what you said about this kind of acceptance of our divine experience on this planet of just stuff, and that we label as good or bad, but it's all inclusive in this beauty. And then, like you said, even obstacles look hilarious. I don't think children they think as learning how to walk as an obstacle. They just want to get from point A to point B, and this thing just looks like a thing to do. And I want to point us in the direction of what's on offer here to at least help articulate it for people listening, because there's something so beautiful about seeing beyond obstacles, seeing rising above the forest and getting a bigger vantage point where, gosh, what comes to me is it's a whole new game of creativity and flow and inspiration that, like, you almost see through the obstacle. Like, it's like through the matrix, right? You see through the obstacle and you're like, wow, like there's so much cool stuff out there that the obstacle or the thing that I'm using language to articulate as an obstacle becomes also another cool experience that happens in your life along the way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting to me, Nikon, that so how do we navigate in this sort of game of life that we're playing? And I'm really seeing that desire gets a bad rap.
Yeah, I'd love. Yeah, please speak to that, because so I guess I can tell the story. The last time we spoke was on a Create the Impossible call with Lynn, and you were speaking about desire, and it completely blew my mind. I'd love for you to speak to that on this podcast.
Well, I don't know what I said then, but I can tell you that how it occurs to me today is that there is an impulse, there is a force in us that leans us in the direction of certain things. And the best way to describe that is desire. Like, I want a thing. There is something in this human called Lorna right now, the human that's currently called Lorna, that wants something. And that can be as simple as avocado toast, or it can be to stop rhino poaching.
Right.
And I know that it's true and pure because it moves through me. And it's the best I've got for guiding me in how I spend my time. So a lot of people in my world say stuff to me like, what am I to do in this difficult environment? I'm such a, I'm only one individual and all that. And I quote Glennon Doyle, who's I think she's a terrific writer, who talks about acting where your heart breaks.
Mm.
So in my particular case, rhino poaching, a good example, it breaks my heart. I have no idea why rhino poaching breaks my heart in a way that many other really wonderful causes don't. I don't need to explain that to anybody. I am choosing to move in the direction of something that deeply moves me. And my desire, my wanting, my aching for something to be better in that space is the best guide that I have as a human to act. Now, as I'm pootling along in that space or wandering along in that space, I will encounter some things that may feel like obstacles to me sometimes. Okay, got that. But that kind of impetus, inclination, wanting, desiring is such a precious, precious, precious thing. And I think we only get in trouble when we identify with it and we want to grab it and then we want to make something of it. But there is something so pure in it that it's a really powerful guide.
I love that you made that distinction of your natural desire. And by natural, I mean nothing on it. I mean, like, you're not going to feel better if you get it. It's just this pure, natural, gentle wind in your spiritual sails, so to speak. And the way I heard you say what you just said, the last time I heard you say it was, and I said this in a different content piece, but you said, what I heard was there's a difference between desire and outcome. And when people say let go, what I heard, Lorna means let go of the outcome. But you can swim in the deliciousness of your natural desire. It just feels good. It feels soft. It's the outcome that's kicking your butt. It's the outcome that makes things look like obstacles, things to overcome to get that desire. But if you're swimming in your desire, it like the wind in your sails, it kind of guides you and it takes you places. And I think riffing off somebody else, it's kind of, your desire has built-in resources too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think that, I think outcome's great too. Like as in a goal, like a big number, a big thing, because it's like, it's part of the game. But like, if I look at my bio, honestly, Nikon, the Lorna of that time really thought that at the end of a whole bunch of those achievements, she would be safe.
Me too.
I mean, she thought that, and that's okay. That was the best I could do at the time. It obviously doesn't look like that to me right now, but actually a lot of cool shit got done along the way. I got a whole bunch of skills along the way. So I think we do the best that we can, but the guidance system of well-being, what I'm seeing now is that and this is, I'm kind of sort of, I can see that I'm not quite seeing something here, but there's something about loving, just being grateful for the wanting, just like I'm grateful for my hand, and knowing that there will be times that my thinking will, attach things to that. And I'll know that if I'm doing that, because I won't feel so good, and I'll probably keep going, or maybe I'll stop and take a break, or it's just all is so interesting. As I'm speaking it, I'm thinking, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but something's emerging here around desire and outcome. And I'm sure I'll see it sometime when it's ready. And this is another thing that's fabulous. There was a time when I would have started saying something, not known what I was saying, felt, quote, embarrassed. And then I would try to kind of get out of it.
Yeah.
And then I would have tried to work out what it was I was saying. This is like, there's some little thing that's not ready to come out yet. I started saying it, it didn't come. oh, well, hi,
Well, I
here we
love
are.
that. And to what I just saw and what you just shared was timing is such a big thing about obstacles, because often at me in my impatienceness is when I meet obstacle, okay, how fast can we overcome this? Needs to be resolved right effing now. And if it doesn't resolve now, I'm going to think about it until it does. And then in this conversation, I'm seeing like, oh, that too isn't on you. Timing is not on you. And I think that's such a big part about quote unquote overcoming big obstacles is sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you're not going to do it in 90 minutes. Sometimes there's resource, or like your desire is showing you something. Oh, that's not, okay, we go there, right? Like I really do feel your desire is showing you something with the things you're coming up against, like a mirror of like something like, well, okay, you need to look at this. And
yeah.
right. And yeah.
But I think there's something else. I know we
Yeah.
need to wrap up, but I want to say something that's
Yeah,
just
go for it.
that I've just seen. One of our big mentor, Michael Neill, says we know or we don't know, or we run out of time. And I've just had one of those. Right.
Wow.
So and what's interesting is I think we glamorize. Oh, well, I don't know, but I'll know when the time comes. And my lease came up in my apartment, coming back to, so now I have a lot of thinking about moving, and my lease was coming up, and I didn't know, and I was trying to over control, and then notice, oh, look, I'm trying to over control. I don't know. I'll wait. And then the date came when I apparently had to put my signature on a piece of paper in one direction or the other. And Nikon, I still didn't know. And that's not how it's supposed to work. Like the timing is supposed, it's supposed to be baked in. Well, shit, it wasn't. And so basically I flipped a coin. I mean,
there you go.
I had to choose. I made a choice. I did a thing. When I saw that there wasn't a right thing, there was a thing to be done, a call to be made. Either we stay in this apartment or we move from this apartment. That's the fact. Once I let go of the timing was supposed to be elegant, I was supposed to get it right. And once I let go of the fact that I was supposed to feel graceful about it, I realized, oh my God, this is clunky and uncomfortable, and it's not a big deal. Everything kind of looks different. I mean, I can really laugh about it now. And even though, there are times when it's icky, even now in it. So I think early on in this journey for me, I dreamed about it all being like, light and roses and rainbows and unicorns. And it isn't, man. That's not what's on offer in humanity. That's exactly what what we were saying earlier. It's, we don't only have beauty and wonder, we also, fart and spit and throw up. And I mean, this is what humans do. It's part of it all.
Heard. Oh gosh, I have so loved this conversation, and I'm going to go back and listen to it too. There's so many beautiful insights, and I want to thank you so much for your time, your love, your space, and your presence. And so 2 last questions. Is the second to last question I want to ask you is, I'd love for you to tell us about your work as a speaker and coach, and how you help leaders, how you bring indigenous wisdom into business and rhino conservation, and more importantly, how you're helping leaders live and lead with love, just so people can get an idea of what you're up to in that.
So this is a great example of how does it look to me in this moment? In this moment, I have conversations sometimes with individuals and sometimes with bigger groups, where it seems to me that if I can help point the people to how life really works,
Mm.
that their lives would be simpler, more graceful, more joyful, and more successful. I do that.
Mm.
So literally what happens, Nikon, is I look in my inbox or on LinkedIn and people write to me. And sometimes I write back and say yes. And sometimes I write back and say no. And sometimes I don't write back. I mean, literally that's what happens.
Mm.
And then if you were to follow me around with a video camera, you would see me having a lot of conversations with a lot of people about a lot of things. And sometimes people pay me and sometimes they don't. I mean, that's exactly how it works.
I love that. Beautiful answer. I'm stealing that answer too, by this. Next time somebody asks me that, I'm like, this is what Lorna said. and my last question, and I ask everybody this, is if you were to give a gift to everybody listening, either knowing, a pointing, or a quote, what would you give?
Right now, I would say, look at your hand with wonder and awe, and know that all of you is exactly the same as that hand. Magnificent, extraordinary, and ordinary.
Bless you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Lorna, for your time. And this has been such a treat. I'm going to stop recording. All right, so I'll see you later, everybody, and stay tuned. Bye.